YouTube theologians, Pastor Wolfmueller here, a thought experiment. If you would imagine with me being a Sunday school kid in Babylon, and you go to the Babylon Sunday school and you ask your Sunday school teacher, hey teacher, how did things start around here? And this is the answer that they give. I happen to have in my hands the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth. And instead of telling you, look here in Genesis 1, it says God created the heavens and the earth, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the evening and the morning, that it was good. Instead of reading that, you read about Marduk, who was the son or grandson of Tiamat, who was one of the gods of the waters who created everything. And all the children and grandchildren of these gods got together and elected Marduk because he could do some magic. And they said Marduk is king, and they give him a mace and a club and a throne. And they say, now go kill Tiamat. So Marduk and Tiamat are in battle. This is tablet 4, verse 89. Tiamat cried aloud and fiercely. All her lower members trembled beneath her. She was reciting an incantation, kept reciting her spell while the battle gods were sharpening their weapons of war. Tiamat and Marduk, the sage of the gods, came together, joining in strife, drawing near to battle. Bel spread out his net and enmeshed her. He let loose the evil wind, the rear guard in her face. Tiamat opened her mouth to swallow it. She let the evil wind in so she could not close her lips. The fierce winds weighed down her belly. Her innards were distended, and she opened her mouth wide. He let fly an arrow and pierced her belly. He tore open her entrails and slit her innards. He bound her and extinguished her life. He threw down her corpse and stood on it. After he had killed Tiamat, the leader, her assembly dispersed, her hosts scattered, her divine aides who went beside her, and trembling in fear beat a retreat to save their lives, but they were completely surrounded, unable to escape. He bound them and broke their weapons, and they lay enmeshed, sitting in a snare, hiding in corners, filled with grief. Bearing his punishment, held in a prison, 11 creatures who were laden with fearfulness, the throngs of devils, who when his grooms at her right hand, he put ropes upon them, bound their arms, etc., etc. He does all these things to the demons who were attending to Tiamat. And then afterwards, he returned to Tiamat, verse 128, whom he had bound. Bel placed his feet on the lower parts of Tiamat, and with his merciless club smashed her skull. He severed her arteries and let the north wind bear up her blood to give the news. His fathers saw it and were glad and exulted. They brought gifts and presents to him. Bel rested, surveying the corpse. Bel is named for Marduk here sometimes. In order to divide the lump by a clever scheme, he split her into two like a dried fish. One half of her he set up and stretched out as the heavens. He stretched the skin and appointed the watch. This is the story of how the world came to be for you young Babylonian Sunday school kids. If you ask, why is the sky blue? You say, well, that's because that's the color of the inside of the goddess Tiamat's skin, who her son Marduk murdered and cut in half and split to make the sky and the sea and the land. That's where everything came from. Now here's the thought experiment. How does your life change? How is your life different? If you think that everything came from this murder of this God of his mother, of this violence, of this cutting in two, of this merciless smashing in the head of the goddess with the mace, how does your view of yourself change? How does your view of the world change? How does your view of God change? How does your view of what's good and bad change? What the goal of life is? Who I am? How I think of the other? That is amazing to think about. I mean, in this room, they're learning about Marduk and his mace. And in this room, they're learning about Yahweh and his word. And here is violence, and over here is peace. And here is warfare and strife, and over here is order and abundance. Over here in Babylon is power, and over here in Jerusalem is authority. Over here in Babylon, it's survival of the fittest. Might makes right. Violence is exalted. And over here in Jerusalem, it's you shall not murder. God is patient and long-suffering. I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, how this changes things. If you're trained up with the Babylonian catechism versus with the biblical truth. And then I'd be interested in the next thought experiment. And that is when someone says, how did everything get here? And the answer is given, well, a very long time ago, there was an explosion. I think Marduk would like the Big Bang.